you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's time to take a look at stories that have made it to the front pages of our national dailies. And joining us to review the papers this morning is JIDE Johnson. He's a public affairs analyst. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning to everyone around the world. And it's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Same. All right, so there's something that has, taken us by storm, which is a bill that is being passed in the National Assembly. So it is past second reading, and on The Guardian, it leads with Reps Mall return to parliamentary system, age limits for politicians. On The Punch, it says 60-year age limits, PDP others knock reps, say bill on precedent, governors misplaced. The writer here says bill may bar Tinubu, Atiku, Obi from 2027 poll, CUPP, SDP back candidates competence against age-based bill. What's your take on this? Because, it was one of our top trending stories, and I was just saying that the president at the moment has only done less than 2 years in office, so he still has about 2 more years, right? And if this bill is passed, that means he's not going to have his second term, because he would not be eligible to, run for office. But we also have Atiku Abubakar, who is the presidential candidate of the PDP. We have Peter Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, and they both ran in the last election. These men are also over 60 years old. So I'm wondering how this is going to pass. I'm wondering who's going to sign the executive order and put the stamp of approval on this, especially with the current president above 60, and he would definitely want a second term. But I would like to get your thoughts on this. Do you agree with what SDP and CUPP is saying when they say they want the candidate's competence compared to the age-based bill? And do you think this is something that would even pass to executive order?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a misplaced priority by the National Assembly. Instead of working out on policies and bills that will make the life of Nigerians better, but to strengthen our economy and to ensure that we have an enabling environment for both local and foreign investors in order to grow our GDP, and in the process strengthen and reduce the cost of living and improve the standard of living. They've gone on a political jamboree that is dead on arrival. It tells you their focus. Their focus is on how to perpetuate themselves in power and how to create different types of empire for themselves. One, is it state creation that is our focus? Is it local government creation that is our focus? Is it the age or removal of immunity from vice president down to the governor that is the focus, or is it the issue of moving from presidential system of government to parliamentary system of government? That's the focus. As far as I'm concerned, this is dead on arrival. Dead on arrival in the sense that this is a major constitutional amendment that requires 2/3 of the State House of Assembly ratifying this proposal once it is passed by the National Assembly. Now, if this case true at the House of Rep, do you think this will scale through in the Senate? And do you think this will scale through in the Senate? I think it's just a way for them to justify the money that they have budgeted for constitutional review. And they are just running after their pet project. And in order to justify the money that they voted for constitutional review, that's why they've embarked on this particular jamboree, which of no value, which of no interest to the needs and the yearnings of an average Nigerian on the street. So as far as I'm concerned, they've not received knocks. I'm sure that their master will call them into their inner chamber and he will give them some talking, and then you see them going back to the National Assembly to deny what they've actually done with their tails in between their legs, because they've not even taken direction from their master before even coming up with this idea. So as far as I'm concerned, it's dead on arrival. You shouldn't even be debating this particular issue.
When the story broke, I was just like, if you always, because if we think of the National Assembly, they work in tandem with the executives and they work with all these people. So if they know that they work together, why would I sign a bill? Because that's just how Nigerian politics is. In a way, it's always about the inordinate ambitions of the other people. And in a bid to play politics, sometimes you have to cut corners or sign whatever, even if it's not something that you would love. In France, for instance, they have Emmanuel Macron, who is a young president, right? And it would be great for Nigeria to also have a young president, but I don't know if this bill is going to take flight. I don't know if it's going to work. Now, if we look at another story here on The Guardian, it says 2027, your second term, a done deal. Akpabio assures Tinubu despite discontent. Obviously, we know that there's been, talks of a coalition. The opposition is obviously trying to unseat President Bola Ahmed Tinubu come 2027. But there are other people who are already telling him that, it's a done deal and your second term is obviously guaranteed no matter what it is. Do you think that in a bid for the ruling party to still seize this power that they've gotten, do you think that they might just look for ways to cut corners whereby they never just give it out freely to what the people would want come 2027?
They've not even done after the first term. It's not even yet up to May 29 where we'll have seen this present government spending half of the time is elected for. They started talking about re-election. And that's an indication of the plan that they have for 2027 coming from Akpabio, who in the first instance was not even elected. He's not even supposed to be in the Senate because he did not even get his mandate from the people. He got his mandate from the court. Akpabio did not contest for the primaries of himself, Lawan, and some others did not. Even the governor of Bauchi State, who contested the presidential, the governor contested for the presidency in PDP, the presidential ticket of PDP, and eventually became the governor of Bauchi State, seeking second term. All of these are the anomalies. So the processes which they used to win the election that they did not even qualify to run for, that's what they are telling that is a done deal, that forget it. But people are short on memory. I remember when Okulafo said, at the peak of PDP, when Okulafo said, PDP will rule Nigeria for 60 years. In less than 2 years, PDP collapsed like a pack of cards. And I see the APC making the same mistakes, thinking that you see where you are most vulnerable is when you get to the peak of the mountain. The height of your success is the greatest threat to your survival, because any little slip, you are coming down. The higher you go on the mountain, the easier it is for you to fall. And the greatest achievement in mountain climbing is getting to the peak of the mountain. And that's when you are even most vulnerable. So the period that APC is most vulnerable now is now. And for them to think that they can hold power forever is because people are short on memory and they don't learn from history. Is it second time we should be talking about how we can have deliverables of democracy, how we can solve the various security challenges that we have, how we can improve standard of living, how we can reduce inflation, how we can make life better for an average Nigerian. But what your second term is, as even Tinubu has he won the presidential primaries of the APC, that means that probably they won't even be presidential primaries based on Akpabio's interpretation of Akpabio's assertion. There's no need for Tinubu to contest the primaries of APC. Even if he does not contest, he will go to court and get an injunction or get a judgment that will make Tinubu to become the candidate, just like Akpabio did not contest the primaries of APC with Lawan, and they became the candidate. So, all of this, we are not practicing democracy. What we have is judiciary. As long as you have captured some institution of the state, you just go to the judiciary make pronouncement, and then you run with it.
That's quite interesting. But I mean, looking at all of this, I'm just wondering that 2027 is still a long way to go, and you would expect that every focus should be on what's important, should be prioritizing the welfare of the citizens. But in a way, I think that's just how Nigerian politics work, whereby when they assume office, they never do as much, because what they're looking for is how to secure, the second term. And most times, all the monies that they gather is usually to ensure that they can run for office again. And it then is in the second term that they decide to do a little bit more work, just because they want something in their ego could say, yes, I did something, this is my legacy. So in a way, it seems like Nigerian politics has just been one-sided, whereby it's all about whoever is in office and what they can get out of it to secure the second term, but never about the people. Anyways, let's look at another story coming from Oyo State, and this one says, "Will always align with Constitution on Sharia law," says Makinde. So obviously the Oyo State governor has clarified this, because there were reports that he was going to go to court regarding this. But right now, during one of the iftar services that is being organized by Oyo State, he clarified that, saying that is not the case, or that's not his true intention, and he stressed that his administration obviously is committed to ensuring religious harmony. Now, one of the things that was being said, because Sharia law was supposed to come to the south, but a lot of people argue that in the south, you have Christians, you have Muslims, and sometimes you can have a man who is a Muslim and his wife is a Christian, and they live together happily ever after. So a lot of cases about this was, how would this work, especially when, in the South, they're known to be liberal. So why would Sharia law want to come here, where in a state, or in the states whereby a lot of people practice different religions? But with Oyo State government now saying this, that they don't mind, what do you think about it being another mediation channel here, using, instead of going to the regular courts?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the issue of Sharia is dead on arrival in the Southwest. There's the Yoruba nationalism and Yoruba culture is bigger than Sharia. You've emphasized that in your talk earlier.
Yeah.
Look, if you go to an average Yoruba family in the Southwest, it's not out of place for you to find African traditional religion worshipper, Christians and Muslims living together in harmony. Now, what you are seeing now that is rearing its head is political Sharia. And like Obasanjo said, political Sharia will die. What's the level of compliance with Sharia in Zamfara State compared to it when it first came up in 2002, 2003, when Yerima introduced political Sharia? You see, the political class, they are very a bit circumspect in dealing with the issue of religion. And these religious leaders, they have some measure of control over the politics. But I can assure you that the issue of Sharia, I don't know about any other region in Nigeria, but as far as the Southwest is concerned, the people themselves, you don't force on people what the people don't want. The people themselves determine what obtains in the society. And I can assure you this one will be dead on arrival. And I'm sure the governor has seen the readings, and that's why he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go to court to further aggravate or amplify an issue which could be easily resolved through common understanding of mediation and of the people. So, as far as I'm concerned, those that are supporting it are just, and sometimes it's very, very clear, the proponents of all of these religious ideals, they are sponsors within and outside of Nigeria. And in order to justify the kind of funding which they get, they tell you that one want to propagate gospel in Nigeria, so they get money from religious body, either from Christian body or Islamic body, or want to propagate jihad in Nigeria. So if you're an ardent follower of one faith or religion, you understand these things. How do they justify the money? And I think that it's important for government to ensure that you don't have foreign bodies funding religious movement in Nigeria. It's antithetical to the secularity of the Nigerian nation. So that's just my take.
Well, I mean, we'll see how this goes, but like you said, for a lot of people, it's probably just dead on arrival. Like, why are we doing this? If we have our regular courts, why do we have to still have Sharia here in the Southwest? Anyways, let's look at another story. So we'll move over to the Punch right now. And the Punch says, experts lament as crude oil or as crude shortage funds, ground 7 refineries. So experts lament as crude shortage funds ground 7 refineries. I know that as of right now, Nigeria will probably producing about 1.4 million barrels of crude per day. Our OPEC quota obviously is way above that, and we're definitely not meeting it. So what's your take on this? The fact that experts are lamenting crude shortage, so we're not making up to, what our quota is supposed to be, and funds obviously grounding about 7 refineries for this.
Look, when people say there is light at the end of the dark tunnel, as far as the oil and gas sector is Nigeria is concerned, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel becomes darker and darker because there's no transparency with respect to how that sector is run. And we said that NNPC is a super institution bigger than the state. We don't. How often does NNPC? How often do they give press conferences with respect to what they do, with respect to or press briefings with respect to what they do, the activities of NNPC and the rest of the challenges that they are having, the successes which they have achieved? How often do they do that? Do they even have a public affairs section? How often do you see somebody in charge of their public affairs coming out to the media and explaining things like you see concerning other sectors, like you see in other countries? You want to know anything about Aramco, all you need to do is to go online and you get everything that you need to know about Aramco, what they produce daily and the rest of it. If you want to know anything about Petronas, just go online and you get everything you need to know about the Brazilian oil prospecting company. But that of Nigeria is shrouded in secrecy. And what is shrouded in secrecy is hidden from the people. And what is hidden from the people tells you that there's a lot of shady deal going on. So as far as the oil and gas sector, which is the mainstay of Nigerian economy, is concerned, the more you look, the less you see, which you say in local parlance, abracadabra. So there's a lot of abracadabra. The more you look, the less you see concerning that sector. We'll continue to talk. These people in that sector, they've grown to thick skin that they don't even listen to you. They are not even answerable to the National Assembly. They are not answerable to any other institution. How much more you and I, if they are not answerable to the National Assembly, the National Assembly that we elected to conduct an oversight, that are busy talking about how to do tenure elongation, how to do create this new system of government and the rest of it, rather than focus on the oversight function of ensuring that the ministries, department, and agencies of government are doing what they are supposed to do. But what we have is them not focusing on that, leaving the core issue and dealing with mundane issues. So NNPC, as far as they're concerned, they are bigger than the state. They are not answerable to anybody. So what do you think? Do you think they are moved by what we are seeing now? They are not moved because nobody can question what NNPC is doing.
Well, like you said, that's what the National Assembly definitely needs to be focusing on, because on the Business NG, it says petrol prices set to rise as landing costs surge by 88 naira per litre. And in fact, that's our hot topic this morning. A lot of Nigerians obviously had a sigh of relief when petrol became 840 naira the moment Dangote stepped in and was working hand in hand with some filling stations. But right now, with the fact that the crude naira for crude deal has been halted, now we're seeing the same price increase again. And for Nigerians, it's just the fact that it's quite volatile, the dilly-dallying of the price. Anyways, let's look at another story on the Business NJ, and it says liquidity crunch forces banks into costly short-term borrowing. So that's where we are now, liquidity crunch, and most banks are obviously turning into commercial papers to navigate this liquidity squeeze. What's your take on this, please?
Interested in putting his money in the bank. When the banking sector came up with different hidden and unhidden charges, with different policies as directed by central bank, how many people would take their money to the bank? How many people who want to engage in savings? Because every of the transaction you make, from 10,000 and above, you know what is deducted from your money. So basically, you should know that it will affect liquidity. These are just basic economy. This is even just micro economy, not even macro. So it's clear the ABCs of monetary policies should make them to understand that with the various policies they came up with in the last 9 months with respect to different types of taxes that they've imposed on people depositing their money, people withdrawing their money, will take away liquidity from the bank, and people will resort to other means in keeping their money rather than taking it to the bank. So it's very clear. It's very clear. It's just a matter of time. If not for government deposit in most banks will have collapsed. Whereas the reverse should be the case. Government should not be the one sustaining the banking sector. It should be the citizen that should sustain the banking sector through their savings, through going there for loans and the rest of it. Yeah. However, we have a different approach in Nigeria. Everything is sustained by the government, and the government will ensure that they impose tax burden on the people rather than for the system to be sustained by the people, to be sustained by the government, for them to have control over every sector of our life. Government wants to control your water, wants to control where you live, wants to control the judiciary, wants to control the legislature. That's what is called state capture. Every aspect of our life is captured.
If possible,
now, there's even one now. There's even one now. Can you imagine? Let me just chip this in for you to understand this. Now, can you imagine the speed limit that Lagos state government has provided in some roads? How can you have 60 km per hour on third mainland bridge, which is meant to be an access road? How can you have a 60 km per hour on Mobolaji Bank Antony Way, which is meant to be an access road to the airport, from inlet from the airport and outlet into Lagos corridor? So sometimes and then you impose 50,000 fine. You understand that what government is doing is that government is looking for money at the expense of the citizenry, not for the comfort of the citizenry.
You know, when you were saying, they're controlling everything, if it's possible for them to control the air that we breathe, I don't know if they would want to do that. But honestly, at the end of the day, when you're looking at the banking sector, like you said, it's the citizens that are supposed to be able to sustain this. But when the citizens don't have the purchasing power for anything, then I don't know where we are. Finally, we have to go now, but in just 1 minute, let's look at this top story on the Nature News that says air pollution kills 7 million across the globe yearly, and that's according to WHO, the World Health Organization. Now, Lagos, is known for air pollution because you see a lot of people, influx of people with their cars, and the whole emissions and all of that. How do you think Nigeria needs to start to find ways to ensure that our environment is cleaner and better for us? Because we need to save the environment. So how can we place ourselves? I know we went to COP28 or whatever it was called the other time, but what do you think we need to be doing now, especially if we need to progress as a nation, thinking of cleaner, renewable energy and ensuring that the environment is clean for us as well?
Well, don't let them come for you online. You said something about Lagos. Lagos is not dirty.
I did not say Lagos is
the world. If you know, you know. If you know,
Lagos is not dirty, but when you think of the amount of cars,
you see,
with the air pollution, let's be honest, yeah.
Well, it's in paradox, Lagos is the cleanest city in the world. Now, you and I know better. Now, you see, it's very clear. This is an example I give to people. I'm a Lagosian. I'm in the other side of my 50s. I know Lagos in the 60s. I know Lagos in the 70s. I know Lagos Ikoyi, for example. Ikeja, GRA, for example. Go and look at those two places. Compare those two places with what it was even up to the 90s, with what it is now, in terms of the number of trees. The number of trees, the type of houses. For example, GRA Ikeja was not designed for skyscraper. That's why there are no drainages in GRA Ikeja. The flood and the rain and water was controlled by trees. The 2 streets were lined with trees which control the flood, which reduces flood. And as a result of that, you don't have erosion in these places. But go back to those places and see it. Look, if I have the opportunity of becoming, let me say, Minister of Environment or Housing or what have you, you can't build your house in Lagos without having 3 trees, minimum of 3 trees.
Yeah.
When God created man, he did not put man in a house. Where did he put man? He put man in a garden.
That for oxygen as well. I completely agree with you.
So yes. there is an interdependence between nature and man. The trees need carbon dioxide that you and I produce. We need the oxygen which they produce. So you don't need any rocket science. WHO does not need to say anything whatsoever. All we need to do is to go back to nature, to go back to the basics.
Fantastic.
There's no way you, simple as ABC. You build a house, you must provide avenues for trees. It's simple. You solve this pollution problem. It's clear.
All right. Thank you so much for that, JIDE.
They live longer than you and I in the city.
Yeah, I think that's something we definitely need to look into, ensuring that we bring nature back, into our environment. Because honestly, we've made, let me use Lagos as an example. We've made it a very cosmopolitan city with so many buildings, so many houses, skyscrapers and whatnot. But the nature aspect of it is missing, and we need to definitely bring that back. And I think in Nigeria at large, because we need cleaner environment for us all, especially if we want our health to be better. Anyways, this is where we have to wrap it up on this segment right now. I want to say thank you so much for coming, JIDE. It's been a pleasure having you this morning. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure being with you, Rume. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too, sir. Alright, so we're speaking with JIDE Johnson, is a public affairs analyst, and we've just been taking the stories that made it to the front pages of our national dailies. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we're discussing our first hot topic, the fact that petrol landing cost rises by 88 naira in 1 week. Please stay with us.